Welcome to The Voice of Retail. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc. This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. It's a complex world of technology, retail alliances, with one thing for certain in an uncertain age: agility, computing power, and an eye for innovation wins. My guest on this episode is Tom Litchford, head of worldwide retail at Amazon Web Services, a technology that brings computing horsepower and flexibility to businesses around the world. You probably already know that. What you might not know is how AWS fits into the overall Amazon ecosystem and how they are now becoming a strategic vendor to retailers like Best Buy, who put aside their traditional competitive frameworks to partner with some of the world's most powerful computing offerings to drive business results.
Strategic collaboration that we have with Best Buy, again, is as their preferred cloud provider for their cloud infrastructure services, as well as their strategic partner for developing engineering talent, which, as you can imagine, is huge across. I think it's across all industries, not just retail.
Let's listen in now. Tom, welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you doing?
Doing great. Nice to hear your voice, Michael.
Yeah, well, this is not the first time we've had the pleasure of speaking together. You were Steve and I's guest on Remarkable Retail a couple of months ago. It was great to meet you, and you got some big news. So I thought, what a great opportunity to get you on the Voice of Retail. So thanks for joining me.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate you having me back.
Yeah, where are we finding you today?
Well, I'm in Virginia today. We're still somewhat locked down. Most of retail is still not back into their headquarters yet. So we're still doing a lot of virtual work, but slowly getting back out there into the traveling world.
Yeah, you've got a global mandate, so it's a different way. I'm sure we've talked about it before, but it's a different way of doing business. Now, are you starting to go to some of the trade shows? Are you getting on the road a little bit for that? What's your perspective around traveling to different shows?
Yeah, we're constantly evaluating that. I think you probably saw that we unfortunately were not in person at the recent NRF as much as we wanted to be. But that was due obviously to the pandemic and just the fact that we want to keep our employees, customers, and partners safe. And with the data we had there, we just felt it wasn't the right time. But, I just saw this morning, though, the numbers are actually starting to look positive for a change. Yeah. And, hopefully we'll have this in our rearview mirror here in the next month or so. Yeah,
I look forward to being and saying the post-COVID era and having it really post-COVID era, right?
I think we all do.
Well, all right. Well, we kind of jumped right in, and it's interesting. You mentioned NRF because in your background you were at NRF. But why don't we take a step back? Tell the listeners about yourself, a little bit about your background, and your role at Amazon AWS.
Sure. Oh gosh, yeah. I'm a 40+ year career guy now. I think I probably mentioned this to you last time. Retail kind of gets in your blood. It's an incredible industry to work for. Just totally different challenges every day when you wake up to deal with. It just makes it fascinating and challenging. But with that, started my career right out of school with NCR, and then took on a role at Microsoft, and then back to NRF, like you mentioned. And then AWS enticed me about 4 years ago to come help them build their retail vertical. So I'm the global lead for retail and wholesale distribution here at AWS.
And what a ride that's been. We're going to talk about it, not just for AWS, but really they're the creator in many ways, but cloud computing and the whole rewiring in some ways. With your great experience, starting at NCR, that's a different company now too, right? So it's such these icons of retail have gone through such change. Let's talk about AWS. There's no one listening to this who wouldn't be familiar with Amazon. Might be customers, they might trade on them. Congratulations, by the way, on the recent numbers from last week. They were just blockbuster. Congratulations on that. Fantastic
Thank you.
Numbers. But let's talk about AWS. So, let's make sure there's a level playing field. It's 3 letters of the alphabet, but it's so much more. So give us a bit of an origin story about how this AWS came to be, what it stands for, and a bit of the scope and the scale of the business.
So AWS is Amazon Web Services. So it's a business unit of Amazon. As most people, I think, understand now, Amazon has several business units that they work with different customers around the world. But we're just over 15 years old now, and AWS was the kind of brainchild of Andy Jassy, who is now Amazon's CEO.
Yeah, he's done well for himself. He's done well for himself.
Yeah, well, again, I think at the time, his role was developing technology services for then the Amazon.com business, and I think he had the vision that saw that, hey, I could take these types of services I'm providing to this customer, Amazon.com, and provide them to customers around the world that need these types of technology services. So, with that, AWS has grown to be the world's most comprehensive and broadly adopted cloud offerings. I think with the last reInvent here in December, we're now, well over 200 fully featured services, whether that's around compute, storage, databases, networking, analytics, 20 plus years of leadership in machine learning and AI, heavy into Internet of Things and robotics, as you might imagine, with fulfillment centers, mobile security, virtual augmented reality. I could go on, but again, we deploy those across the world globally through 26 geographic regions across what we call availability zones. So 84 availability zones within those regions. And I think we just announced 24 more coming online here pretty soon in Australia, India, Israel, New Zealand, Spain, Switzerland, UAE, and Canada. So
you got a broad remit. My goodness, that's a big broad remit. Now, I don't want to call it the legend, but as I understand it, maybe you would, of course, you would know better. The search, or what created AWS, was really the search for enough computing power to handle the fast-growing Amazon business, and it kind of was like, we can't go out and find it anywhere. So typical Amazon, we're going to create it. Is that a fair representation of the story behind AWS?
No, at the time, I mean, they were still, using all sorts of services. But again, Andy was then, providing, in terms of IT services, the power to run a business like Amazon.com.
Yeah.
And again, I think the vision that he saw there is the way these services were set up, that you could architect them in such that they could serve multiple customers around the world. And when you look at the business model from doing that, we see customers as they're running their systems on-prem today are saving anywhere from 30 to 50% to move those into a cloud-based services and architectures, which then allows them to take those savings and invest them more in driving innovation for their company.
And to be clear on the business model, the breakthrough is basically that you pay for what you need versus buying extra. Like it's kind of I wouldn't say pay as you go, but that was one of the business model innovations really behind AWS. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I'll give you a specific example in retail that's just, classic, what I would call low-hanging fruit is, take e-commerce platforms, today, I've made the comment before that, when it comes to provisioning an e-commerce platform on-prem, it's extremely difficult to do, to where, that system's not sitting there idle most of the year and then overtaxed in the holidays as we saw these past holidays. Well, what the cloud does is, with features such as auto scaling, it can see that volume ramping up coming in, and it will ramp up the available resources to deal with that volume. And then when the volume goes back down, it settles back down the available resources. And as you just said, you're only paying for those resources while they're being used. Well, I was going to say then we even pioneered and innovated on top of that into architectures that we call microservices, that now you're literally only paying for the time when the code is running. right? Not so so even if you had like a EC2 compute instance sitting there, it could still be idle at times that you're paying for. Whereas in a microservices environment, you're just paying for the time that code runs. So our customers are seeing another, 30 to 50% savings on top of the 30 to 50% they got when they moved it to the cloud to start with.
Now, last question about AWS structurally, because I'm just genuinely curious. Of course, when we say the cloud, things aren't up in the sky floating above our heads. So you have physical facilities kind of around the world. I imagine colder places than warmer places for cooling. Is that a fair representation? I mean, let's talk just for a minute about the physicality of AWS.
Yeah, well, it's like I said, we have 26 geographic regions around the world. And within each region, we have what we call availability zones, of which there are 84. So at least a region has 2 availability zones, many times more than that in terms of reliability for performance.
Right on. Well, one of the things that brought us back together today was this business deal you did with Best Buy. Now, I want to get to that. I want to hear all about that in a minute. But as we did actually a remarkable retail first time we talked about it, I wanted to talk about kind of the competitive nature of retail. You described it to me as the big thud in the sales process, where you say, "Well, am I not supporting what is ostensibly my competitor when I do a deal with AWS?" So clearly, Best Buy saw beyond that. But take me through and take the listeners through, when you're asked that or when you're talking about that, how you position that or how it's understood by customers and prospective customers.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think I mentioned to you that is a perception that we deal with in the industry today. But I also probably told you again, we work with thousands of customers around the world. But when you think about it too, I think as more and more retailers start to understand the value that Amazon can bring to their business, not just AWS, they really start to understand how we can help them grow their business. So by that, what I mean is, if you think of AWS today, we are an IT services provider, but from an Amazon perspective, we not only provide that, but we also provide logistical services. That's where you see things like the hub and lockers. We provide distribution services through like the Amazon Marketplace or using services like FBA, Pay. We have fulfillment by Amazon on the logistics side. You have Amazon advertising now helping customers grow their business through that route. So
wow, what numbers? The first time we saw the number, I just got to speak the numbers because it's the first time we've seen numbers. What was it? 31 billion, and congratulations! I mean, that's huge, right? You're like it's funny when people think of Amazon, the average consumer, they don't think of this platform that is now such a complex and interesting hybrid of a business, right?
Yeah, so it's not just Amazon, the retailer. Think of Amazon as kind of a holding company that has all sorts of services that can help retailers grow their business. And when it comes specifically to AWS, I think customers choose AWS because of our retail heritage. I mean, our consumer business is a large customer of ours. We treat them just like any other customer. They leverage our services and they provide feedback to us to help us improve those offerings, which ultimately benefit all of our customers. And when you think about it, just think, I was thinking about Amazon Prime Day last year. When you look at these services and think about them from a retail hardened perspective, just on Prime Day 2021 last year, a service called CloudFront itself had peaked at over 290 million HTTP requests per minute. The Amazon Aurora database processed 233 billion transactions, and the Dynamo DB service handled 89 million requests per second. So those are the types of, what I would call retail hardened services because of that relationship I have with Amazon Retail that, makes us unique to the industry in terms of providing cloud services. And the other half of that is the innovation that we drive in the industry. I think I talked to you before about how we're always working backwards from our customers' perspective. And when you look at some of those purpose-built services, such as Amazon Personalize, which is that, famed recommendations engine on Amazon.com, or Amazon Forecast, which is the AI/ML algorithms for how they do demand forecasting, Amazon Connect, which is the call center, or fraud detector on how we detect fraud on the web. All of these innovations that we have developed on that side of the business, we make available to all of our customers. So there's just example after example of how customers are choosing AWS because of that innovation technology that we bring to them and help them provide the best experiences for their customers.
Well, you touched on a few, kind of a good segue into my kind of a shorter question is the benefits of AWS. I mean, when you roll it all up, what is it that retailers are finding most competitive? It's the security, the AI, the analytics, the horsepower. Is that what CIOs are finding the most competitive? I guess it's the bundling of things that you just talked about, right? All put together. But is there any one that stands out as in, this is the one, I start this first. I want to make sure I don't have to worry about security the way I used to, because I think you guys will take it. Or is it just a bundle of all those things put together?
I think it's a combination. When you look at the thousands of retailers across the world that we work with, we've worked across all retail segments. By that I mean things like food and drug or general merchandise, specialty retailers, pure play digital retailers, and Michael, we've done just about every imaginable workload you can think of out there. And giving you some examples of, for example, Brooks Brothers, we literally pioneered and innovated how you run these large SAP complex systems in the cloud. Or, at Under Armour, we power their mobile app, which now has over 160 million customers using that app. Or, at Neiman Marcus, it started with more of a kind of mainframe migration discussion that drew into a customer data platform discussion, which then grew into, because of the pandemic, how do I, get that one-on-one relationship that customers experienced in my stores to kind of mimic that in a mobile environment. Or going across the pond to Sainsbury's started with that example I gave you, of getting that e-commerce platform into the cloud. But then it was, let's retire our Oracle RAC system to, I don't know if you saw the announcement last month, they're now going to deploy Amazon JWO technology for their checkout free stores, right?
Right.
So again,
just walk out for the listeners who may not know the.
I'm sorry. Yes, just walk out technologies.
I've called it "chop it while you stole it," but you probably don't want me to describe it that way. Let's talk about Best Buy. Let's talk about this tie-up with Best Buy. Big announcement last week, and it caught me. I wouldn't say caught me by surprise, but it certainly caught my attention. I mean, Best Buy and Amazon in many worlds compete aggressively against each other. Yet there's a tie-up here. I guess back to your point about the services. So tell me about the deal, how it came together, and what you're doing for our friends at Best Buy.
Yeah, so exciting deal. It's basically just deepening the relationship that we've already had together as partners across AWS as well as other services. I think what makes it a little more unique is Best Buy is also known for their culture of innovation and use of technology to better serve their customers. And a great example of that was just how quickly they deployed an industry-leading curbside pickup experience when the pandemic hit. I think they were able to, package and get something out there in less than 2 days to start serving their customers better. So this strategic collaboration that we have with Best Buy, again, is as their preferred cloud provider for their cloud infrastructure services, as well as their strategic partner for developing engineering talent, which, as you can imagine, is huge across. I think it's across all industries, not just retail. But
speak more about that. What does that mean? Unpack that one a little bit for me. Yeah.
So I mean, it really comes down to is if you're going to attract, by engineering talent, I'm talking about IT engineers, right? IT professionals. These folks want to work for, the state of the art technologies that are out there. And so by partnering, Best Buy partnering with AWS and us partnering with them to get their people trained, we're providing them an opportunity to really solidify. I think you probably saw they were recently announced as part of Fast Company's best places to work, and they just want to continue to expand on that in terms of attracting the best engineering talent in IT to do that. So we're going to work with them to get these people trained on cloud technologies.
Huh. Now, is this as you know, this is a Canadian primarily podcast? Does this cover the Canadian business? Is this everywhere where Best Buy operates? Speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. So again, the cloud infrastructure side of that partnership is to move their data centers and core enterprise applications into the cloud. But in terms of across what businesses, where, that's something you should probably talk to Best Buy about.
All right, so they'll figure that out, but basically you got a strategic partnership that keeps growing, so clearly they're happy with the outcome, right? Is right. Basically what we saw there. Well, so you spend a lot of time with retailers listening and advising. They tap into your depth of experience and all the resources you bring. So I want to do the same thing. I want to tap into your insights. Advice to the retailers listening: 2 starts and 1 stop based on everything that's happened over the past COVID era or whatever, the past couple of years, and what you think collectively as an organization is going to happen over the next year or years to follow. So 2 starts, what they should start doing, and 1 thing they should stop doing based on your experience.
Yeah, and I think it goes beyond just looking at coming out of the pandemic, what's hot, what's not, this and that. I mean, obviously we know we've got supply chain issues to fix. We know we've still got customer experiences things to do. We've got to get rid of channels and become more agnostic to how we look at our customers. But if I were to give at least some broader advice to retailers and customers across all industries, is I'll start with the stop. Why don't we stop this inward and competitive focus and start really getting more customer focused, really listening to what those customers are asking you for. And then the second start would be make sure you have the capabilities to address what they're asking for and experiment. And that's the only way I think, that we're going to be successful over the course of time here.
Well, I've talked to a lot of retail CEOs who said, I don't know what's coming next, but I know I need to build my organization for agility, right? Would you agree? I mean, basically, there's no way to predict, there's no way to predict what we've going through, and there's no way to predict what happens next. So you better be more agile. Would you say that's a popular term in the meetings?
Yeah, and take that agility and start experimenting. I always argue, your employees have some of the best ideas in the world for how to serve your customers better. So why don't we listen to them, and why don't we, get this culture of innovation and culture of experimentation, and then just have a relentless focus on removing friction from the experience that they have with you as a brand. And I think over the course of time, you're going to win the loyalty of those consumers.
All right. Well, listen, this has been great. Now, where can you no doubt have lots of things to say as an organization somewhere, somehow, and probably here's a way to get in touch with you. Where can people go to learn more or get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I love talking to customers day in and day out, and would welcome them to just email me directly if they like to do that. It's tlitch, TLITCH at Amazon.com, or go to our website, aws.amazon.com/retail, and there you can find about all sorts of things around customers we're working with and the types of workloads and innovations we're driving with them.
All right. Well, very good. Well, Tom, it's such a treat to get you back on the mic again, again, to share your insight, tap into your insight for the audience. I thank you for being and joining me on The Voice of Retail, and I wish you continued success and safe travels when you get back on the road with your big global remit.
Yeah, absolutely, Michael. Great to hear your voice again, and look forward to seeing you here in the near future.
Thanks for tuning into this special episode of The Voice of Retail. If you haven't already, be sure and click and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so new episodes will land automatically twice a week. And check out my other retail industry media properties, the Remarkable Retail Podcast, Conversations with Commerce Next Podcast, and the Food Professor Podcast with Dr. Sylvain Charlebois. Last but not least, If you're into barbecue, check out my all-new YouTube barbecue show, Last Request Barbecue, with new episodes each and every week. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, president of LeBlanc Company and Maven Media. And if you're looking for more content or want to chat, follow me on LinkedIn or visit my website at leblanc.co. Have a safe week, everyone.